of Wales. He developed an interest in wine first while traveling through France and took part in the grape harvest in Châteauneuf-du-Pape in France. Relocated to the Pacific Northwest, working in the hospitality industry, and he became certified as a sommelier. He has taught classes for the International Sommelier Guild and developed and taught the Sommelier Certificate program at the Central Washington University, where he also received the prestigious 2008 Rudd Scholarship for his exceptional performance in the Advanced Sommelier exam. He also judges wines at some of the most prestigious wine festivals around the world. Please give a warm welcome and your attention to Rob Woolford as he talks about the wines that you just had, the wines you're going to have, and the pairings.
All right, here.
I have absolutely no idea where she found all that information. I really don't.
It's on the website.
So, Penfolds has a very long and storied history. As Stacey mentioned, we were founded in 1844 in Adelaide, South Australia. It was actually an Englishman, Dr. Christopher Penfold, who moved out to a little area called McGill with his wife Mary, and he settled in and set up a medical practice. And it was Dr. Christopher's fervent belief that fortified wines were a medicinal tonic. Specifically, yes, specifically against anemia. And he was quite pleasantly surprised when he found that his patients were drinking his medicinal tonics even when they weren't sick. And indeed, hence the winery was founded. However, a little sidetrack for the young ladies here. Even though it's Dr. Christopher's winery, he was exceedingly busy with his practice. And it was Mary who ran the vineyards and ran the winery. She was responsible for the planting, the trellising, the pruning, the harvesting, and then in the winery, the blending. And she blended the wines to her own personal palate. So in fact, in the late 1840s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, the backbone of Penfolds was Mary. Which is interesting, because I can only think of one other young lady vigneron who was that powerful in the world of wine in the 1800s. Somebody? Oh, you're going to kick yourself when I tell you. Madame Ponsardine de Veuve Clicquot. Everyone's like, oh, I knew that. But in the 1800s, there were very, very few women winemakers and vignerons who had that vast control over the vineyards and the actual winemaking. Our story continued for quite a while, but what you want to hear about today is the philosophy of our winemaking. And that began in the late 1940s with our very first chief winemaker, Max Schubert. Max Schubert, some of you might know, developed Grange, possibly one of the top 3 wines in the world, easily the greatest red coming out of Australia. We sent him in 1949 to Sherry to learn a little bit about fortified wine production. On his way back, he stopped in at Bordeaux, and he got to barrel taste the 1949 vintage at Chateau Lafite, Chateau Latour, Chateau Margaux. The winemakers loved him so much that some of them actually opened up bottles from pre-World War I. And this blew Max's mind, because these wines did not exist in Australia. And he came back just charged with wanting to make an Australian wine that could age and become an icon. And so in 1951 he created Grange, Penfolds Grange Hermitage. 100% Shiraz, aged in new American oak barrels. And over the next 4 or 5 vintages, he really started adjusting it and getting it just perfect, so that by 1955, he had really thought that he had dialed it in. It's interesting, because the Penfolds family lived in Sydney, 900 miles away, and they had heard little rumours that their chief winemaker was just onto something fantastic. And so they invited him out at the end of 1955 to taste his wine. They wanted to taste this. And so Max brought his bottle, took the train out to Sydney. And I imagine it sort of like Mad Men. The whole family is around a big table, everyone's in their suits, double-breasted going. They even invited a couple of wine critics, and everyone's excited to taste. And Max comes in with the bottle, starts pouring it around the table, people are tasting it, and of course everybody absolutely and utterly hated it. They despised it. They hated it so much that they actually wrote him a legal cease and desist letter. They told him to take his passion, his work, all the barrels of grains that he's already made, blend them back into production. Stop this folly, stop wasting our time. And then they shoot him back to Adelaide. Max arrived back in Adelaide, and he was perhaps a little upset. And he went down to the cellar, and he built a false wall in the cellar. And he took all of his barrels of grain, and he hid them behind the false wall. And for the next 3 years, down in the Adelaide cellars, behind the false wall, he continued to make Grange, despite the wishes of the Penfolds family. To cut a long story short, the Penfolds family eventually tasted Grange, that 55, 5 years later in 1959. And with 5 years of bottle age on it, they realized, we've got something brilliant here. We start up production again. Max, come on, we gotta go. That 1955 went on to be one of the most medalled wines in history. It won gold medals obviously in Sydney, but also in London and Paris. Max's philosophy was one of balance and longevity. And when you taste these wines today, all of these wines are the progeny of Grange. They are all the heritage, the lineage that Max set down back in 1951. What you have already tried today, we talked a little bit about the Bin 311, the Chardonnay, which was the very first wine that you tried. The Riesling is from close to us, just north of us in Eden Valley, which is about 500 meters in elevation, and it catches the ocean breezes coming in off the Gulf of St. Vincent. And it's a cool climate. The Eden Valley was actually settled by the Germans in 1847. And hence, they planted a lot of... Exactly. And this is a classic Australian style, and as I mentioned to a few of you, this is the classic German style from back in pre-1900s. It was only in post-World War I, post-World War II, that German Riesling started swinging into the sweetness. And you're starting to see that even German Riesling is coming back into this nice, very, very food-friendly, dry style. The wine you have just tried, there it is my Bin 8. Now, Bin 8 is a blend of Cabernet and Shiraz. We own, as a winery, over 1,850 hectares of vineyards. And we have long-standing contracts, 20 and 30-year contracts, with another 3,500 hectares. So we're not really out on the open market buying grapes from people we don't know. We have full control of our wineries, we have full control of our grapes. So you'll notice that we don't put a lot of new oak on our wines. We're very proud of our fruit. The quality of the fruit really shines through. I'm hoping that most of you, as you're tasting through the reds especially, notice these are not the prototypical New World wines. The alcohol is in check. The acidity, it's all in balance. The next wine coming up is Bin 9. This is the sibling wine of Bin 8. You may make your own distinction as to whether you think it is the sister or the brother wine. It's entirely up to your choice. This is 100% Cabernet. It is a soft blend of French and American oak in a similar fashion to Bin 8. We then move up to Bin 28, which is our first 100% Shiraz. This was first made by Max in 1959 and remained one of his favorite wines throughout his life. He actually drank a bottle of Bin 28 every single day. It's a good life if you can lead it. It is named after our monopole vineyard, the Kalimna vineyard, which sits in Barossa. And I want you to think of Barossa in a similar fashion to Napa. Barossa sits down low. It's fairly flat, it's very warm. So you're going to get a very, very rich, expressive style of Shiraz. But again, there's no new oak on this wine. This is all second, third, and fourth year American oak. So we're more about the fruit here. We then move on to bin 138, which is our Rhone blend. So Shiraz, Grenache, and Mataro, also known in French as GSM. What does the M stand for in French? No, close. Come on, another M word. Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvèdre.
Mourvèdre.
Yes, everyone's like, oh, so close again. But this wine is 100% Barossa Valley. And the Barossa Valley has over 100 hectares of 100-year-old vines. So we average about 60 to 80-year-old vines in this bottle. And then finally, but not as a pairing, we'll be pouring our Club Tawny, which is, of course, where we first started off. And if any of you are feeling a little anemic, cold weather has sunk into your bones, this will definitely help. This again is a blend of Grenache, Shiraz, and Cabernet. It is fortified in a similar method to port, but then we age this in a solera. And a solera is a system of barrels used in Jerez in Spain to make sherry, and they use it to fractionally blend as they age their wines, so that you get a very, very nice, consistent wine. I also like this wine as well as drinking. I have found it very useful mixing in certain cocktails, or drinking just slightly chilled on a hot summer's day. It's quite pleasant. So please, thank you all for attending. Thank you for listening. One last thing. If you have enjoyed the food and the wine here, do not hesitate to get Mark, who is the general manager here. He is the handsome gentleman in the black jacket with the red shirt on. In April, he is actually hosting a Penfolds, more of a dinner event, with a little bit more sort of larger entrees. And so you'll see a few more of our line on the upper end, yeah. So talk to Mark, please don't hesitate to track him down. I'm sure he'd be very happy to talk to you about it. So, do enjoy. Thank you very much.
And remember to keep your glass.
Yes.